Welcome back, my friends, to the sweet spot where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as every week, I have my two co-hosts, Howard Holton and Paul Lewis. Hello, guys.
How's it going?
Another week.
Almost 200 episodes, and I think we finally realized never waste a good story.
Yes.
Well, I think the bar for good needs to be raised, but otherwise, I'm with you.
All right, fine. Never waste a story.
A story. There we go. That works for me.
So I hear you're looking at buying a car.
So,
Yeah.
I think everyone at this point knows I have a significant number of vehicles. I have more vehicles than any person should reasonably have.
Okay. That's why you have an 18-car garage.
Are you competing with Jane Leno?
I don't have. I wish I had Jay Leno's budget. So interesting thing about Leno. Leno never spent any of his Tonight Show money.
Interesting.
Yeah. He banked all of it.
Interesting.
I find that fascinating, right? How many people have the ability to say that, right? They were on the Tonight Show for that long.
I spent all my money.
Yeah. And he has that car collection. Right? Outside of like the Sultan of Brunei and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, he may have the most valuable car collection in the world.
Now, did he trade up for those?
I don't know, but speaking of that, there's a car YouTuber I follow. Happy to plug him. It's Legit Street Cars. Guy's name is Alex. Alex kind of got started with, I think it was an E55 AMG Mercedes-Benz. I'm going to nerd for a second, right? The E55 is a supercharged K113 M113K motor, I think is the specification. It's a 5-liter supercharged engine that in about 2003 was producing 400 horsepower, which is a ton of horsepower for that time, right? That was before we got into the 2010s kind of horsepower wars.
Right.
So I've been following him for a while. What I like about him is he's entertaining, but I learned something in every single one of his podcasts. And since I'm a big car nerd, learning something about cars is a ton of fun. Seeing him do things that you don't normally see, like change the valve body on a Mercedes automatic transmission for the Chrysler high performance version to get better shifting, is kind of cool. And recently,
there's a lot of words I don't understand, but go ahead.
It's okay. That's not the point. And so that last video right there, where it says perfect combo, LS engine and W124 Mercedes.
Yep.
Okay, so the W124 Mercedes is a 90s era Mercedes from when Mercedes built cars without a focus on their cost. Right? Like they used a whole cow per seat for the leather.
Right.
The interior's extremely nice, extremely well made. The dashboard's the dashboard's not cracked. Like, the cars were just built like tanks. And some lunatic took the anemic diesel engine out and put in an LS engine. So, 400 horsepower Chevy General Motors engine into this Mercedes-Benz where the car was beautiful, but the engine would always make you feel like your grandfather was on a Sunday drive.
And it fit. There was no compatibility problems.
I mean, they were all worked out, and so everything works, right? Replaced all the dash gauges because there was no way to make the dash work, right. And everything works, right? Windows work, sunroof works, car screams, and it's just kind of fun, and kind of gets around the one complaint I had of the W124. At the end of the video, Alex says, "I'm looking to trade the car or sell it, and I want to trade up." And my goal is to kind of do a red paperclip thing and continue to trade up and trade up and trade up until, I have something significantly more valuable than the car I started with. And this isn't the car I started with. This was the first of the trades or second of the trades. So, of course, I reached out this morning with a car that I have to trade. And I'm super excited because Alex and I have been going back all day long trying to figure out the logistics and see if this trade's going to work.
Is he local to you in some way?
No, he's Chicago.
So, no. That's not too bad.
I mean,
could be Orlando.
That is true, right? I wonder what the drive to Chicago. The drive to Chicago is about, I'm gonna guess 16 hours. I'm gonna maps it, but that's my guess. It's about 16 hours.
Just meet in the middle.
Just put on a flatbed.
Meet in the middle.
No,
There's trading anyway, right?
it's not any fun. It's gotta be meet in the middle at a minimum. Gotta drive out there, you know.
So then, what's the peak of that trade up? Like, what would be the end? What's the top? What's the very best one could trade into?
So 14 hours and 1 minute without tolls. That's how long it would take me to get to Chicago. So I wasn't too far off. It was 16 hours. So what is the best you could, like, if you continue to do subsequent trades to get to the best possible car?
That's right. Presuming once you get to a certain level, you're only going to billionaires to do trade ups, right? But presuming you could keep going all the way to the end, what's the end?
That's a good. It's a $20 million hypercar. But that assumes you just go with new cars,
right?
Like,
I see. If it becomes a Bond antique, then
well, yeah, because then you get into stuff like an F40, right? Yeah, so there's Bugattis and Rolls Royces in the greater than 10 million kind of range. But that assumes we don't go for like a you don't go for like a Ferrari F40, you don't go for a like a Duesenberg or something from really early, from the 20s, teens, or you don't go for like a Ferrari California. Like, there's some really cool cars that would be in the like $10-20 million value range that are far from new.
So you kind of have to have a goal, because you might have to pick a category at some point, a certain age, a certain style, a certain level of antiquity, a certain speed.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
roadworthiness.
I think at some point it just completely falls apart anyways.
Right.
Because at some point, like, you're going to have to transition from one car class to another car class.
Right.
And getting the buyer to want to make that switch is going to be really complicated, right? Like, if I have a 69 Daytona, right? Why would I trade that for a BMW M4? You know what I mean? Like, those
unless age is the difference. Yeah.
Like how do I make that appealing to someone that's going to make a leap of that difference, right? And no one wants to go from an exotic backwards or a hypercar backwards. Right. So I think there's going to be some transition phases that he's going to have to play with.
Unless that person already has a double, right? This is card trading. They already have two of those, so they're going to give one up in order.
Yeah, but like, okay, I have
got it, need it.
And I only need one beachfront property. And let's say both of them are, like, I bought the house next door in Newport Beach.
Right.
I bought the house next door in Malibu. Right. Super desirable location. It's a great location. It's worth, let's say, $8 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going to trade it for another $8 million house. Do I really want an $8 million house in St. Louis, Missouri, though?
I bet it's much bigger.
Sure. But in one house,
buy a lot more in St. Louis.
In one house, I go outside all the time because it's Malibu, and thus the square footage is unlimited.
Right.
Because that's where I want to spend the time. In the other one, I need 12,000 square feet so I can get bored of Missouri.
Right. Just got to stay in.
Right? Like, I don't know anybody that's going to go, you know what? Missouri's nice this time of year and California isn't.
Got it. All right. Fair enough.
You're trading up vehicles.
Yeah.
What about if we trade up from being an attendee to being a vendor at a conference?
Okay. I'll buy that transition.
I've been trying to see where you guys are going. And I'm like, it's 10 minutes to the dot.
I'm not sure I appreciate the premise. Trading up from a customer, an attendee, to a vendor?
Yes,
I don't know. Maybe that's worth the start.
Don't even start. Like, why would you make that transition in your career?
No, I would say, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to be a vendor at a conference or an attendee at a conference? Or arguably the third option, which is a speaker at the conference?
Well, a speaker by far.
Yeah,
But-
definitely speaker ranks the highest, right? But then of the next two,
But of the next two, the question is, are you Prince Charming or Cinderella? I mean, that's the question, right? Like, do you want the expense account to take someone to the nice meals, or do you want to be taken to the nice meals?
right.
Right? So do you want to be Cinderella or Prince Charming?
I've always said that my transition from running IT to effectively selling IT, it was the exact same meal as different credit card.
Right.
My lifestyle actually didn't change.
Yeah. I mean, mine did.
Right?
Right?
For
I
better?
went from being on call 100% of the time to 0%.
Right. Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
I just meant my conference lifestyle, not my
Sure.
not my 3 a.m. lifestyle.
but
That
even my
absolutely
conference
changed.
lifestyle is significantly, substantially different.
Yeah.
I don't really get emergency calls.
Right.
I was gonna say that.
Like I can go to a conference and kind of concentrate on the conference. I say kind of because there's still, like, if I have, I think I did the math. I have an average of 39 meetings a week.
Hmm.
So if I normally have 39 meetings a week, I'll have between 3 and 9 meetings outside of the conference.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they don't go to 0, but they go down so much that I can actually concentrate on the conference.
Right.
Whereas when I was an end user customer, when I was an attendee, that didn't necessarily happen, and I had all the on call stuff that would come up. Right. So I think as a vendor, it's better. It's worse because you're generally kind of stuck where you're at. You know what I mean? Now you have meetings at your booth,
Mm-hmm.
and as a vendor, the meetings tend to be the same. You know what I mean? This is the current sales motion. This is the message at the booth. This is the conversations that are supported. Right? Maybe as a vendor, maybe you're presenting at your own booth and you're doing, twice a day or 3 times a day for 4 days, the same exact presentation.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Same pitch, different audience.
Yep.
Even if it's a speaking pitch, if you're just meeting one-on-one, you're
Yep.
still pitching either the company or the product or the service,
Right.
and it's the same 30 seconds.
Yep.
Yep. Same questions, same answers. You can anticipate most of the 15-minute window you have with this person.
Yep. And the measurement is still how many MQLs and SQLs did you generate?
Right.
Right. Like it's not all rosy as a vendor at these events. As an executive, it's a little different. You have more freedom, right?
Yeah. I definitely have less booth duty than I would have had in the past.
Sure. But you still have booth duty. You still have like the same expectation, right? Paul's there to help us close deals, not just
100%.
the dinner. Right?
Are you finding that it's changed over the last several years where you have a much more well-defined objective? So before it was get all the leads you can. Now it's 20 leads. You won't be seen as successful unless you've hit this KPI. So
Yes. Yeah. It was very much, we want leads, to now we want this number of leads to be successful. And if we don't generate this number of leads, then we're not successful.
And is badge scan lead?
I mean, not for me. If the lead doesn't have a note, it's useless to me. I have no interest in it whatsoever.
Right. So it was badge scan, but it was a conversation, and you put in notes in the badge scan, you press submit, we're good. But if it's a walk by tchotchke badge scan,
Not
meaningless.
Totally meaningless.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, the whole point is for it to be a qualified lead, not just a lead.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd remove the Q from MQL and SQL. Just be a marketing lead and a sales lead. Those are useless. I want qualified.
So last time you said, as an attendee, you attend lots of meetings, or your goal is to talk to lots of people.
Yep.
Your goal effectively is the same on the reverse as a vendor, though.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter which direction it is, right? Even as a vendor, when I walk the floor or when I go to sessions, I still try to generate conversations. I still try to meet people. I'm just going to meet different people. Right? My goal still being the same. I may go to other booths and see what my smart competition is saying, and then, my takeaway might be I need to hire that person.
Right.
Or
that message seems to resonate. Maybe I need to reevaluate what my message is.
Yep. And this has happened too. I go, I'm no longer concerned about them as competition. I mean, they're missing the point or something along those lines, right?
Right.
Or they had a really good point. Right. Even if it didn't resonate. Oh, I didn't think about it that way. They're not saying it the right way. That's really interesting.
Do you find yourself going to the same amount of content as if you're an attendee? keynotes?
No, I go to way more
breakouts?
content as an attendee.
Yeah, agreed.
And this is kind of pre the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's pre the last 2 years. If you paid for a pass, you just got to go. They didn't always simulcast it, and you didn't always get to stream it.
Right.
Now you always get to stream it. I don't even know the last one I went to where they're like, yeah, we don't do streaming for anything.
Right.
Right. And so
It would have to be a very small conference.
yeah. And those are annoying.
Very small conference.
Any conference that doesn't record, you don't even have to live stream it, but make it available a month, at least a month after, and let me watch all the episodes. Like
Sure. Yeah.
You have engineered it so there is more than one track. Therefore, it's conceivable I would be interested in things I could not see.
Right.
Why penalize me?
By default.
Right. Why go neener? It's too bad to be you. No, I paid you. Give me the content.
Which is kind of why I like the analyst conferences, because for the most part, they post the decks in the app, right?
Yeah.
So you can pick and choose which breakout you want to go to based on the content of the deck sometimes, right? You can scroll through them and say, okay, I got the general gist. I'm not going to learn much here. I'm going to go to another one.
So
even if the topic was interesting.
So as an analyst, it's totally different, because as an analyst, and we could talk about this more in depth next week, I get a program. I tell them what I'm interested in, and AR puts it together, and they make sure I meet all the right people and have the conversations that they think I should and that people want to have with me. Right? It's a much more like catered experience.
Right.
And I would just generally love that.
When you go now as a vendor, are you the talent or are you the executive?
It depends. I actually prefer to be the talent over the executive.
I'm mostly the talent.
But it depends.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm mostly the person that they bring to the session to speak or to the meeting or to the dinner or to the party with the assumption that I'm going to schmooze, right? I'm going to entertain in some way. That entertain might be a conversation or it might be a presentation, but I'm there to be the talent, not necessarily to be the executive. Sure, there are other executive roles there, but that's usually what they use me for.
So I would say it's, let's say 70-30, right? So 70% of the time I'm the talent. I'm there to schmooze. I'm there to raise profile. I'm there to do that sort of thing. 30% of the time I'm the executive, which falls into two categories. One, executive problem solving. I have an issue, blah, blah, blah. Two is executive to executive meetings. As in, if I wasn't the executive, they're not interested in meeting with me.
Right.
Right. An executive wants to meet another executive. So it's 70-30, I would say.
Do you get a lot of problem solving? It's actually very rare that somebody would come up in a session that where I'm a vendor at to say, hey, we're having a customer service issue with you, right? Or a technical problem with it.
It's pretty seldom.
Yeah.
It happens from time to time. But what I do is what the company does is very specific, and so it kind of makes sense. I didn't like how we were placed.
That's true.
Why weren't we on this report? I don't know. I'll find out. I can find out. It's fine. That's that. And just for the record, that is executive problem solving. Right. I will look into it and get back to you.
Your immediate response isn't maybe you should have been better?
Sometimes. Like, how did you communicate? Did you actually, it's a staged process. Did you go through the stages, or did you just complain afterwards because you ignored all the emails?
Right.
Either's fine. But I can, and I've worked with either, right? No, we didn't notice it. No, we missed it. Whatever. Okay. All right. Well, that changes the response, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to see if there's something we can do.
Logistically, do you concern yourself with stand up, stand down, a booth, sort of any of the planning and logistics of the event itself?
I would prefer not to.
Meeting prep, all that kind of stuff. That's not something you're generally involved in.
So about 2 weeks out, I go through my calendar, and I go through each meeting. I go, okay, so what are we doing here? Why are we doing it? Right? Because I have a 4 meeting per day limit. Right? That's meetings, events. Like if I'm getting on stage and speaking, that counts as 1.
Right.
So it's 4. And there's always 7.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I got to go through and I go, okay, well, so we said 4. Let's talk through which ones we're canceling. Right. And it tends to be, the ones that are early that are, kind of pie in the sky. You know what I mean? And so it's like, no, I want to
Yeah.
trim this down to things that I think are going to be valuable and interesting. And if we don't think it's going to be either, then why are we doing it? You know?
Do you have break times?
Yeah, I mandate an hour in between, or a half hour in between. Sorry.
Right.
And then the other thing I started to do is I'm going to conferences, like big conferences. I'll go with someone else, right? So I can be 100% focused on the conversation that I'm having, and that someone else takes notes, tracks follow up,
Right.
Does communication, that sort of thing. Make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Usually a seller.
No, I prefer not to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who do you use?
I hired an executive assistant and then promoted her to run advisory. So I'll bring her often because she runs advisory. So a lot of the people that we speak to are advisory customers.
Right.
We don't have the ability to transact, which is why I said no to seller. Right? Like if they said we love everything you do, I want to buy 20 hours, which is a lot of hours because advisory is not consulting.
Right.
I would go, fantastic. Call this person. Neither one of us.
That's right. We're not involved in we're not involved in the revenue production.
Right. So at Black Hat, it'll actually be my head of marketing. It's coming.
So do you spend a lot of time with the sellers though? Like my involvement on the either show floor or in the booth or in meetings is seller setting up, right? Or CE setting, whatever the sales team is doing.
The sellers set up most of the meetings.
And then we're engaging as, 4 legs or 6 legs, and then they're responsible for the follow-up of whatever that meeting was. I'm neither taking notes nor am I even thinking about the next steps.
Yeah, when on the vendor side, when I have a booth, right, which doesn't happen now but has happened in the past, when I have a booth, it's my job to be where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there, and not really anything else, right? And so now it's someone generally not in sales that pairs with me. In that case, it would be the salesperson that set up that meeting that brings the customer over and introduces them, and we kind of go back and forth. And no, I'm a goldfish, right? My memory of the event starts when the event begins, and memory vanishes after the event's over. So yes, I'm not required to track anything,
right?
And I'm very firm on it. Right? If you want notes, take them. If you want follow up, take it. Right? You are the one with the bag. I'm not. It should matter to you a whole lot more than it does me.
Mine's also a physical impairment. I just simply can't remember what happened in the last 3 meetings to appreciate what action items there might have been.
And if you set up a follow-up, but you provided no notes, I'm not really interested in supporting you as a salesperson.
Right.
Right. Like you were in the meeting, you didn't take notes. I carried the conversation, right? Got the customer excited. You didn't provide any notes afterwards and then set up a follow-up.
Right.
How are you helping me?
Especially if I look at you explicitly say, we should do this.
Yeah.
Get them this document. This would be an interesting follow-up, like explicit as it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So GigOhm specifically, where would you show? Like what's the best bet if you were to have a booth? I'm trying to appreciate where that would be.
I don't generally.
No? Yeah, like as an institution, you don't show anywhere necessarily?
No. So we it's not a place that we really invest at the moment. It's hard for us, I think, to really do a booth. Like there is an investment not just in the cost of the booth, but also like people are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in booths.
Oh yeah.
So you have to make a relatively significant investment in the tech and the setup and the people and everything to make that valuable. Right. And the messaging really has to be on point.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know how to tell someone. I haven't yet been successful with telling people how to really explain our value prop. Like I seem to do okay with it. I don't know that I want to try it in bulk at a conference.
So then the reverse question, if that's true, then GigOhm could do your own conference. What's the likelihood of that future?
So in the past, we did.
I didn't know.
GigOhm very much did. So the likelihood of that future, I think GigOhm will likely have its first conference in, say, 2026.
In person.
In person, yeah. We'll probably
Would
do
you
our
attempt virtual
virtuals.
before that? Like
Yeah,
half
we'll probably
day
do
for
virtuals
things?
in 2025. Right?
Nice.
And it'd be focused on end users,
Consumers of analyst product.
consumers of tech product. Yeah.
A product, yeah.
Yeah, that's that would be much more interesting. Mostly because like will, as a CIO, you're happy to talk to and hear from your peers.
Yeah.
Right. Vendors are less likely to want to do the same because
Right.
they're competitive. Like I don't compete with another CIO. I don't compete with another CTO. I just don't.
Right.
Right. You may have natural competitiveness because you want to be fantastic and they may be better than you, but that's just kind of the natural stuff. We're not actually in competition.
That's right.
I'm more than happy to share with my C-level peers at other organizations about the stuff I do that they could find helpful. You know,
Even in the recruiting cycle, you're not competitive because you don't even know who the other competitors are at that point, right? You're still trying to be the best you can be in that situation.
correct.
Yeah.
It's so much more valuable also to just like even if the companies compete,
Right.
Even if I'm Citi and you're Wells, it's still valuable to me to be able to have a direct conversation with you.
100%. Yeah.
I'll be at least as open with you as you are with me.
Yeah. I've never assumed or felt that I was competitive with any other peer that was in the room in any situation, even if we're there in the same geography and same business I was doing. Because we still have, even though there might be like problems, they're still different problems. Right?
Sure.
Like the reality is most problems are centered on individual people on your team. Well, guess what? Their team looks different than my team.
Sure.
They're different people, actual
Sure.
people, therefore different relationships. And, there's a lot more different than there's the same, even if we're delivering a banking system, right? Okay. That's kind of where it's the same.
I don't know. I think there's a lot more same, but it's same to a percentage.
Right. Same to a percentage.
There's nothing that's same to 100%. That's not 50,000 foot, 100,000 foot.
Right.
But there is same to to 70%, 60%, 50%. Right. Even if it's like, hey, I've got this thing on my team. Yeah, you may not have that thing on your team, but as an exec, you've probably had that problem before.
Right.
You've probably managed a team that's had that particular dynamic and had to figure out some way to work through it.
Sure.
And thus can talk to it.
So then from a vendor perspective, do you consider that the same? Are vendors competitors too? So if you're on the floor, you'd go to a competitor and say, hey, I'm from X company. We clearly compete head to head on some circumstances, but wouldn't it be interesting to talk?
I mean, I did.
Yeah.
Right. I talked to every competitor we had when we were at our former shared employer.
It's interesting because they actually don't care. They actually have the conversation.
Some of them care.
Yeah.
Some of them don't want to talk to you. And I had that happen multiple times.
Really? They push you
yeah.
away.
Oh, for
Really?
sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
I actually got some secrets, like how they were implementing this stuff and telling us how they were better than what I was doing at the previous employer.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah. No, it was always the individual. It wasn't the booth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like you'd walk up to NetApp and all of NetApp would turn you away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
And I think product companies are less concerned than service companies because product companies already have all their content readily available to be consumed, right? You could already compare your product with their product, right? That already existed. So there wasn't a lot of secret sauce they could be telling you. But on a services side, there's a lot of closely held secrets there. Our process, our delivery, our people, our whatever, right? It might be slightly different, and it's very difficult to compare two different services companies in any real way. In fact, websites don't even tell you much between two services companies, right? Other than the topics they're willing to talk about. Interesting.
Great.
So, vendor, attendee, no preference. They're equally good to you.
No, I think they're equally good and very different. The only value that you have at a as a attendee is you have more freedom to pick your schedule for sure.
Right. Sure.
Right. Way more freedom. If all I want to do is sit in sessions all day, I can sit in sessions all day. If all I want to do is visit the expo hall, I can visit the expo hall.
True.
When I get exhausted, I can just walk away.
Right.
As a vendor, you don't really have that. Like your life is scheduled. Same with as a speaker. Right? You have far less freedom that way as a speaker or analyst, right? Because you tend to be like as an attendee of an end user organization, conferences are the fun thing we get to do and still get paid. Take vacation days to do
It's
that.
still considered work.
Correct. Right? People are going to treat me good at every meal. I get free stuff. I get to enter raffles. Like I get to meet with other people that I know.
Right.
They're fun. And at the end of it, if I come home and I don't bring anything back to the organization, sure, somebody may say we're not sending you to that one again next year.
Right.
But the reality is there's not really a penalty for it.
Right.
Right. If I'm smart, I make sure that the organization gets something out of it.
Right.
But even when I make sure the organization gets something out of it, I get 10 times what the organization does.
Right.
Like I get 10 times learning for the 1 X I put out.
Yeah. Learning, relationships, networking, content.
They're a great way to find your next employer.
Right.
Fantastic.
Certainly.
Right. Now that is also true
on the vendor side.
On the vendor side.
Correct.
Right? It is the only way that it's more true than the vendor side is on the speaker side.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
As a speaker or an analyst, oh, they're fantastic.
That's right. There's a lot of people coming up to you at the end of that gig.
Yeah. So don't dismiss the networking value of a conference ever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's why I say, right, build relationships, be impactful.
Yeah.
Right. Because that networking value cannot be understated. It really can't. The amount of value there, or can't be overstated. I mean, the amount of value there is just huge. If you're a vendor, every other vendor that is even tangentially related to you is there. Go make relationships for Pete's sake.
So you talked about bring back value. If the bring back value as an attendee is in many ways content or content summary, what's the bring back value as a vendor? Like what's next week look like after a conference?
Competitive and market intelligence. Right. Well, what is the competition doing?
Yeah.
Right. What are they doing that's better or worse? Right. And if you were to lay everybody out on a racetrack, right, where would you put your car and where would you put their car?
Yeah.
Right? So who's ahead of you and who's behind, and then who's maintaining more speed through the turns?
Yep.
Right. So is your velocity greater than theirs or not?
And what's the thematic differences between everybody? And is there a gap or an overlap? And is there any adjustments we need to make based on that gap overlap?
Yep. Can you fill a gap that you saw? Right. Can you do you need to pivot? Right?
Or do we all read the same? Right. And if we all read the same, then we have to change just to create differentiation. Yeah.
Right. And then new relationships. Or refreshing old existing relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those I think are important.
We have a program called Friends of Pythian, right? Because we've been around for 25 years, and there's a lot of CIOs and CTOs or executives that have moved from the organization that was a client to some other organization. So what we find is when we go to conferences or just through our networking, that we'll see, John and Sally works for somewhere else, and that's now created a Friend of Pythian for a new lead, no opportunity at that next organization. So we have a very specific program to say, let's see if Sally's there. And if Sally's there, let's reach out directly and say, hey, remember when we had that great, professional services gig? I wonder if we could do that again. So very valuable to continue.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Carlos. Now we've heard both sides.
Oh, so there's one other rule.
Oh.
No swag. Don't be responsible for swag. That's a sucker's
no, definitely not.
Right? Yep. So at the end of the conference, you're a vendor. You're at the end of the conference. You're standing at the booth. Everybody's trying to figure out what to do with the leftover swag. Any swag that you're given, walk around and just hand it out. Don't be a sucker. Don't try to check that crap and take it home.
I never do.
Right? Make it someone else's responsibility. It's an SEP, it's someone else's problem.
Someone else's problem.
SCP, that's a good one.
Right? And if you don't have a meal planned, plan a meal for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
Right? That if dinner's 5 hours away and you have 4 meetings, that's 4 opportunities to have someone interesting at a dinner.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, but by the way, would you want to go grab the steak with me? Yeah.
Correct. Plan accordingly. I mean, there's very little you can do to make a relationship better than one-on-one off the expo floor.
Right.
No pressure.
There you have it, my friends.
And everybody's got to eat. That's the best part, right?
Yeah.
Generally.
And Starbucks. So
That's right.
three
Everybody
Starbucks.
needs coffee. Everybody needs to eat. Everybody wants a drink at happy hour.
That's true. That is actually one thing we didn't talk about. One of the things that I do recommend and I do is I make sure, like, if there's a thing that I drink a lot of Gatorade, diet Gatorade. Right? I like it more than water. I like it more than soda. I identify where is the easiest path for me to get that. Where's the easiest path for me to get a coffee and a snack. Those three things.
Right.
And I know exactly where those are. Even if I have to walk further because I've moved through the expo floor, right? I know where my favorite one is and how to get to it from anywhere, right? And that is a really important thing because as you go from meeting to meeting, right, being able to go, well, if I go 2 minutes out of my way, I can get refreshed rather than waiting. And then before long, it's like, oh my God, it's, now I'm thirsty. I went from thirsty to really thirsty. Now I'm entering dehydration because I wasn't paying attention. Right, that's a piece of logistics that I highly recommend. And at 11 o'clock, and when you're finally stumbling back to the hotel in Vegas, knowing how to get yourself a Gatorade or a water or a coffee is really important.
It's a good tip. I time all of my expo walks during snack times. So if there would clearly be a table as I walk by that will have some sort of packaged good snacks.
Well, there you have it. Additional how to learn to be a good sponsor as a tech conference, but also how to refresh. We didn't say that last week, but that also is an important part when you're an attendee. Because if you're there the whole day and then you're going to go the night for the event, you need to be replenished and make sure that you know what you're doing. So, my friends, make sure that you share, you subscribe, and we'll see you on our next episode.